Hello, listeners, and welcome to another installment of Cult News. I'm your speaker, Casey, host of the Cult Vault podcast, and every week or so I release a video looking at the most recent news articles in the cultiverse. I have missed a few weeks, so this is going to be an extra long video where I cover things that I've missed and things that have been released recently. If you find this content helpful or interesting, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button and find me over at patreon.com/The Cult Vault to support the show further. And now, on to today's news. A new documentary titled The Cult at the End of the World takes a look at the infamous group Aum Shinrikyo. According to The Hollywood Reporter, the documentary was premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, and although it covered key details of the cult movement, it was unfortunately a dry and surface-level retelling of the events surrounding the doomsday spiritual political cult that was responsible for the deadly 1995 Tokyo subway sarin gas attacks. 13 people lost their lives on March 20th due to this terrorism, with the group being forced to disband, renaming themselves Aleph later on. An article on the Yorkshire Evening Post states that the close family and friends of a Leeds man have accused him of harassment after he sent them messages and circulated documents stating that the church he was formerly a part of is a cult. Lance Christie stood trial at Leeds Magistrate Court after being charged with harassment against his son, nephew, and several other members of the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church. After spending his life in the movement and being excommunicated in 2017, Christie spoke up against the abusive nature of the church, which resulted in the PBCC taking legal action against Christie's so-called smear campaign. Luckily, the judge saw through the tactics being used by the PBCC and Christie was quickly acquitted. According to the Yorkshire Evening Post, a legal representative of Mr. Christie, Simon Myerson, said that the accusations made by the church members were a concerted effort made out of vindictiveness and spite, and an exercise in pearl clutching. The Standard reported recently on the new Channel 4 comedy series titled Everyone Else Burns, a TV show based on the intricacies of Christian groups that have doomsday prophecies. According to The Standard, the show is even funnier to those who are worried about their own family being obliterated by divine fire. Something that is very real and difficult to explain or for others to relate to if there is no prior understanding of rapture anxiety and hellfire and brimstone teachings often found in doomsday churches. A Standard article speaks of the opening of the series, saying it's 4 a.m. in the suburbs of Manchester, but the Lewis family are already awake. Under the frenzied shouting of their patriarch David, they scramble to get their things together and embark on a grueling 3-hour hike to the outskirts of the city. The Channel 4 TV show is being hailed as the most relatable cult comedy in years. The Sun recently ran a spotlight piece on the Children of God, looking back on the leader and founder David Burke, detailing the depravity of this monster and how he founded the group, the despicable crimes he committed, and the circumstances around his death. Unfortunately, despite dying in 1994, Burke's teachings live on in the rebranded but equally abusive group known as the Family International, led by matriarch Karen Zerby, who should be at the top of the FBI's most wanted list. The Express recently reported that Serena Williams has been officially baptized, becoming a fully fledged member of the Jehovah's Witnesses, the most accomplished female tennis player of all time, which is interesting considering that she's joined a group that has questionable misogyny, recently retired from the sport but has decided to focus on her religious practices. Becoming involved with the Watchtower organization later in life, Williams is now fully committed. After baptism, a person's involvement in the JW org changes significantly. For this, I asked Stephen Mather, former Jehovah's Witness and co-host of the awesome podcast Cult Hackers, to help me with some explanations. Stephen explained that you can be considered an associate of the JWs by studying, attending meetings, but you are not officially a Jehovah's Witness until you have been through baptism. To be baptized, you will have had to have been associated with the JWs for a while and demonstrate that you are living your life according to their rules. The elders go through a set of questions with you first to make sure that they think you understand enough. As an interesting aside, This sometimes takes place with young people who don't know much of themselves or the world and are still expected to make this commitment. But that is my own observation that I had in the middle of Stephen's information. Stephen then goes on to explain that once you are baptized, you are subjected to all of the rules, such as being disfellowshipped, public reproof, and potential judicial meetings with JW elders. Interestingly, when I asked Stephen about the recent beer commercial for the 2023 Super Bowl advertising Michelob Lager, Stephen explained that there is not a ban on alcohol within the Jehovah's Witnesses. This was confirmed by other former JWs who have recently been calling out their former brothers and sisters on Twitter, saying that JWs are some of the most alcohol-dependent people they have ever met. Various reports have come out recently about the WWE alumni and personality Hulk Hogan being involved in Scientology, as well as being spotted with fellow celebrities. Involved in the church, Hogan is also supposedly dating a member of Scientology, as reported by the Daily Star. It would seem that Hogan is either considering or is already a part of the Church of Scientology. Speaking of the Church of Scientology, according to Fox News, missing David Miscavige, the current leader of the Church of Scientology, has finally been found and served with official legal papers after being particularly difficult to locate for several weeks. According to Fox News, Miscavige has now been served 27 times with documents related to human trafficking. According to the Fox News article, the Church of Scientology's leader was served in 2 states with a federal lawsuit that accused him of human trafficking, but lawyers were either denied entry or told that he wasn't at that location, according to court documents. But after 10 months, the US Judge Julie Sneed ruled that David Miscavige was actively concealing his whereabouts or evading service. He's, quote, deemed to have been properly served as of the date of this order, February 14th, 2023, and therefore has 21 days to answer or otherwise respond to the allegations in the lawsuit. A spokesperson for the Church of Scientology said in an emailed statement that Miscavige never evaded service, and that this case is nothing but blatant harassment and was brought and is being litigated for the purpose of harassment and hoping that harassment will extort a payday. These allegations in the complaint are absurd, ridiculous, scurrilous, and blatantly false. To follow this, The Express recently released an article titled Space Lizards, A Cult of Personality and Tom Cruise Inside the Weird World of Scientology, which looks at the history of L. Ron Hubbard's Church of Scientology that began in 1954. With claims that extraterrestrials came to Earth 75 million years ago, the article unpacks the strange history of the church, key moments within, and where the church stands today. The Mail Online has recently run an article highlighting the events that took place on Mount Carmel Center in Waco that was occupied by the Branch Davidians with leader David Koresh. The article details how Vernon Howe, known commonly as Koresh, was able to infiltrate Mount Carmel and slowly establish leadership, which turned into totalist control, sexual abuse and rape of children, coercive control of all followers, before a 51-day standoff between the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms Department in the Mount Carmel compound resulted in the deaths of 76 Branch Davidians, including 26 children and David Koresh himself. The Hollywood Reporter has released an article stating that Tim Blake Nelson and Vera Farmiga are set to play Bonnie Nettles and Marshall Applewhite, or T and Doe, in a Heaven's Gate biopic named The Leader. The film will focus on the largest mass suicide to take place on American soil, when 39 members took their own lives in an attempt to ascend to the passing Hale-Bopp comet in 1997. Yahoo News recently highlighted the February 9th Hulu documentary Stolen Youth Inside the Cult at Sarah Lawrence, and remarks that the Zach Heinzenling docuseries is not a salacious reductionist piece like the earlier Peacock documentary, but in fact is the first version of this lurid yet intoxicating crime story that recognizes the people behind the headlines. And that's most apparent in how Stolen Youth gives the most heartbreaking victims of Ray a human story, allowing them to speak up on camera, free of their tormentors' presence and influence. For interviews with individuals that appeared in this documentary, you can check out my YouTube channel or podcast feed. The Daily Mail recently reported that a 63-year-old Messianic spiritual Canadian leader named John DeRuiter has been arrested for sex attacks on 4 different women. According to the article, the self-styled leader of a wealthy spiritual community in Western Canada has been charged with sexually assaulting several of his followers after telling them a spirit instructed him to engage in sexual activity with them. Police in Edmonton have said that John DeRuta, 63, was arrested and charged on January 21st on 4 counts of sexual assault that allegedly occurred between 2017 and 2020. According to a police statement this week, his lawyer says that he will vigorously contest these charges in a court of law. For decades, DeRuta has run an organisation called the College of Integrated Philosophy, which is also known as the Oasis Group, which some accuse of being a cult. Within this article, it is alleged that there are teachings within the group of the mortal and immortal mind, the use of coffee for spiritual purposes, a subscription charge for all Zoom calls with the self-proclaimed prophet, who tells followers he was changed at the age of 17 when he had a message directly from God, who went on to use his promise of enlightenment to abuse several followers. Fox News has recently reported that the Dancing with Wolves star Nathan Chasing Horse has been charged with federal crimes including 2 counts of sexual exploitation of children, including 1 count of possession of child pornography, which should actually say possession of child sexual abuse materials, after Chasing Horse allegedly filmed the assaults himself. The actor, aged 46, was allegedly living with 5 wives when he was accused of grooming underage girls to replace his older wives. Accused of running a cult named The Circle, which has seen 300 or so members come and go, and is said to be the place where Chasing Horse was convincing members he was a medicine man and grooming children. The Independent recently released an article stating that FLDS incarcerated leader Warren Jeffs has a nephew named Heber Jeffs, who was recently arrested for kidnapping a 10-year-old girl. According to the report, Jeffs had taken illegal custody of his niece after her birth mother left the FLDS movement. Upon the mother's attempts to rescue her daughter from the destructive polygamist religious sect, Warren Jeffs allegedly told his nephew from his Texas prison that he had received a prophecy and instructed his nephew to stop the 10-year-old girl from being taken from their so-called flock. Heber Jeffs awaits extradition for kidnapping. This is the end of this installment of Cult News. If you found this content helpful or interesting, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. And to support the show further from only £1 a month or $1.50, you can find me at patreon.com/The Cult Vault. I'm your speaker, Casey, host of the Cult Vault podcast.